Nuller Glim had always suspected that the Bureau of Extrastellar Administration, the proud, labyrinthine BESA, was more interested in stamping papers and maintaining tidy file archives than actually exploring the galaxy. Every wall in BESA's central complex was lined with shelves stuffed with documents. Inquiries about starport tax codes, permission slips for asteroid drilling, petitions from alien life forms complaining about meteor shower disruptions, and countless volumes of internal regulations no one could possibly memorize. From the moment Nuller started his apprenticeship, he had been assigned to the Department of Cartographic Anomalies, a place rumored to be the final resting spot for outcasts with too much curiosity and too little respect for protocol. He spent his days hunched over an antique console, cross-referencing star maps that hadn't been updated in centuries. Sometimes, just to stay awake, he would amuse himself by reading old margin notes that previous archivists had scribbled, probably a hoax, decommissioned by Council's order, or secret danger. Don't open unless you hate yourself. It was the perfect job for a mildly rebellious mind in a mountain of bureaucracy. One afternoon, after inputting the same set of coordinates for an unremarkable planetoid for the 18th time, Nuller found himself holding a battered data crystal labeled with shaky handwriting. The label had mostly worn away, but he could still make out the letters ER. Nothing else. He should have filed it under illegible, as per standard procedure. Instead, he felt an irresistible prickle of curiosity, the same prickle that had gotten him reprimanded by superiors many times before. Against better judgment, he placed the crystal into the console's archaic reader. At first, the screen displayed nothing but a jumble of nonsense, glitching lines, and an error that told him, ironically, this data is restricted by the Committee of Not Knowing. But with a few practiced keystrokes and a subtle override code he'd borrowed from an old friend in the tech department, he coerced the system into revealing the contents. Suddenly, a star chart popped up, showing a swirling cluster of coordinates in a sector widely believed to be empty or off-limits. The word Earth blinked in the corner, accompanied by a sublabel, Mythical Deathworld, Classification, Class Row. Earth. The name was vaguely familiar, like a bedtime horror story repeated by old cosmic sailors or a cautionary tale whispered around BESA's water dispensers. Some claimed it was the ultimate in infiltration tests, a phantom planet whose inhabitants defied every known law, a place so bizarre that the Bureau had presumably declared it off-limits eons ago. Others said Earth was just a running joke among cartographers who got bored and made up legends of hyper-aggressive bipeds who drank poison for fun and invented dangerously silly pastimes. Officially, there was nothing in the BESA records about it. That alone was suspicious. BESA kept a file on everything, from rogue comets to suspiciously shaped nebulae. Yet Earth remained hidden. He leaned closer. The console's voice synthesizer kicked in, sounding tired and bureaucratic. Warning: these coordinates are heavily restricted. Any further attempts to access will be logged under Incident Code 455. B. Subsection Curiosity Offense. That was the voice of trouble. Still, Nuller's heartbeat quickened. Something about this made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. A planet so thoroughly erased that it shouldn't exist, but apparently did. He glanced over his shoulder. His supervisor, a gray-faced official named Sectina Dross, was too busy sorting new paperwork to notice him. Typical. Sectina never questioned any file as long as the stamps were in the correct places. Nuller carefully saved the coordinate data onto his personal wrist device. If Earth was real, and if it was so feared that BESA locked it behind restricted archives, he needed to know why. But it wasn't long before the system triggered an alert. A shrill beep echoed throughout the rows of consoles. From across the labyrinth of desks, Sectina Dross looked up, alarmed, and spotted Nuller's terminal flashing red. She marched over, her posture stiff with indignation, and demanded, "Glim, what have you done this time?" He minimized the window and tried to look nonchalant. Just standard cartographic cross-checks. The system must be glitching. Dross scowled, her fingertips tapping the console suspiciously. "We don't have time for anomalies. Submit a 7Q correction form immediately, and ensure you fill out the reprimand self-report while you're at it." "Yes, Supervisor," Nuller said, forcing a polite nod. As soon as her back was turned, he made certain the coordinates remained tucked safely in his personal device. He had an odd feeling this was only the beginning of something bigger than any form or regulation. That night, after everyone went home, Nuller stayed behind, double-checking references in the oldest cartography logs. He found mention of Earth in cryptic footnotes, words like dangerous, canceled from memory, and forever exiled from charts. The strangest references indicated that Earth's inhabitants called themselves humans and engaged in baffling behaviors such as lighting fireworks during national disputes and harnessing energy by shouting at technological devices. It was, in short, a place that sounded more mythical than real. But those coordinate sets were consistent, popping up again and again in archaic data. No matter how he tried to dismiss it, Earth refused to vanish from the records. Something about it was stubbornly persistent. He downloaded everything he could onto a private flash module, tucked it in his jacket, and left base's building with a mix of exhilaration and dread swirling in his chest. If Earth was truly out there, maybe someone else in base's upper echelons was already aware of it. Maybe that was exactly why it had been locked away. The next morning, Nuller returned to find chaos in the halls. Security drones zipped overhead, scanning the ID badges of every employee with unusual thoroughness. Nuller blended into the throng, trying not to attract attention. He overheard anxious whispers. Someone accessed the Earth data. That planet's a myth, right? They say this might trigger an executive council meeting. We can't risk that. By the time he reached his department, there was a new message on everyone's console. Under no circumstances approach or research Earth. Report any Earth-related references to your immediate supervisor. Nuller bit his lip, remembering that he was basically the cause of that message. Great. He briefly considered that maybe he should just bury everything and pretend ignorance. But curiosity had always been a stubborn flame in his mind. Earth might be the biggest discovery of his career, the biggest in base's recent history. If it existed and was half as strange as the rumors said, it could change their entire view of the galaxy, or cause panic, possibly both. By midday, a summons arrived at his desk. He was required to attend a top-level emergency management session. That alone was unprecedented. The top level never consulted mid-level archivists. With a sinking feeling, he walked into an austere conference room to find a small panel of scowling BESA officials who introduced themselves as the Special Review Board for Anomalous Planets. The chairwoman, a severe figure named Marat Quell, wasted no time. "Nuller Glim, you accessed restricted files. We're not pleased." He swallowed. "I was only verifying some cartographic data that seemed—" She cut him off. "Yes, Earth. The so-called mythical Deathworld." The board shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "It appears that your little escapade triggered the old alarms. We have no choice but to investigate." "But if Earth is a myth," Nuller began, but she glared him into silence. He realized that if Earth wasn't real, they wouldn't be so alarmed. Something deeper was at play. Quell spoke with deliberate calm, as if reading from a script. "We will be sending a small expeditionary team to confirm that the coordinates lead nowhere. You, Nuller Glim, will be part of that team. You'll be joined by others with, let's say, unconventional skill sets. If you confirm that Earth is non-existent, the matter ends. If you confirm that Earth does exist and is indeed a hazard, BESA will proceed with final protocol." Nuller's heart hammered. Final protocol? He had never heard that phrase used outside of doomsday references. "Yes," Quell said, expression unmoving. "We remove the planet's reference from all star charts, forcibly if necessary. Permanently. The coordinates will be sealed behind the highest classification. Earth will remain a ghost forever." That was how, less than 24 hours later, Nuller found himself recruited into a special project few at BESA seemed to take seriously, at least on the surface. The official line was that they were verifying an outdated star chart, but the hush-hush manner told him that the higher-ups were genuinely frightened by the possibility Earth might be real. And dangerous. He was not the only misfit assigned to the mission. During a short briefing, he met the other recruits, Drek Zahn, a pilot with a well-known track record for questionable landings, who claimed that cosmic navigation was just a vibe, man. Then there was Vara Snick, introduced as a medical specialist but rumored to have an obsessive fear of germs that made her over-sterilize everything, including her own reflection. Lastly, a battered old administrative robot named K. 7 joined them, apparently repurposed from the Besa archives, still glitchy enough to rattle off random procedures at inopportune times. They all stood in a hangar behind Besa's main tower, facing a lopsided spacecraft with peeling paint. The words "slightly lost" were stenciled on its hull, though. Half the letters had chipped off, leaving SLGHY low T. Drek surveyed the ship with something like delight in his eyes. Beautiful, isn't she? Nulla had his doubts. You're sure it can make a hyper jump? Sure, Drek answered with a shrug. It's got a warp engine installed by mistake. And a coffee maker that's older than my grandmother. But hey, that's part of the charm. Vara Snick gingerly approached the loading ramp, scanning it with a handheld microsanitizer. I see dust and possible spore colonies. This could be a major health hazard. K. 7 beeped, its monotone voice emerging. Please fill out Form 114 section or if you detect new species of mold. Thank you, and have a sterile day. Then it rattled, trailing off in a click. They boarded anyway, as they had no choice. The interior was cramped, the seats mismatched, and the control panels blinked in unsettling ways. But it was their official mission to travel to those forbidden coordinates and see if Earth existed. The moment Nuller strapped in, a swirl of excitement mixed with dread turned his stomach. Their launch authorization came through with shocking swiftness, as if Besa wanted them gone before anyone could protest. A day after being summoned, Nuller and his ragtag team found themselves blasting out of the docking bay and into the starry beyond, heading for a point on the map that might be nothing, or might be the most notorious planet in the galaxy. The first few days of travel were relatively peaceful, if one could call them that. Drek was more than happy to let the autopilot handle most of the cruising, though he had installed his own enhancements so that every time they activated sublight engines, a jingle played, announcing "slightly lost," putting the leisure in interstellar. Vara loathed it, claiming the jingle spread bacteria-laden vibrations. K. 7 mostly kept to itself, perched in a corner, occasionally reminding them to fill out checklists or disclaimers about dangerous cosmic anomalies. Nuller spent those days in the cramped lounge, flipping through more data about Earth. He found contradictory notes from ancient times. One indicated humans were unstoppable warmongers who once threatened to conquer the galaxy with something called fast food. Another suggested they were docile creatures who stared at glowing screens for hours on end, seemingly without purpose. He showed these files to Drek and Vara one evening. Drek laughed. They made a planet illegal because the inhabitants watched glowing screens. Vara frowned. What if these screens transmit deadly viruses? I heard a rumor that humans invented viruses just to sabotage each other's devices. They apparently have forms of entertainment called reality shows, Nuller explained. And that might be what triggered the classification as a Deathworld. Some reports say it's the ultimate sign of a species that's lost touch with sanity. Vara rolled her eyes. Just keep that planet away from me. I've had enough of unexpected contamination for one lifetime. As the autopilot calculated their hyperjump, a sudden warning beeped. The main console flashed a swirl of lights, and the warp engine flickered ominously. K. 7 droned. Engine variance at 2.7%. Please file a mechanical discrepancy report. Drek shut off the autopilot. Looks like we're going manual. He flicked switches with flamboyant ease, ignoring the red error messages. If any of you want to pray to whichever cosmic deity you fancy, now's a good time. They hurtled into hyperjump, the starfield stretching into lines of white, then twisting into a swirling kaleidoscope. After an unnerving moment of weightlessness, everything snapped back to normal, and Slightly Lost tumbled out near an unremarkable stretch of space. The console beeped. Coordinates matched. According to the star chart, Earth should be here. They found themselves in orbit around a small bluish sphere partially covered in swirling white clouds. Land masses spread across the surface in irregular shapes. It looked alive, vibrant. An entire planet of green and blue. None of them spoke at first. They were too stunned by how ordinary it appeared. Finally, Nuller said softly, That's Earth, isn't it?" Varasnik stared at it like it might sprout fangs and leap at them. "K. 7-word. Class row, Deathworld found. Processing." Drek let out a slow whistle. "It's not on any current star maps, though. You'd think someone would have charted this. Something is definitely up." They initiated scans. Strangely enough, Earth had plenty of radio signals, drifting through space like chaotic chatter. That alone was astonishing, as it indicated a technological civilization. "They definitely exist," Nuller murmured. Vara turned pale. "They might be so dangerous that Besa decided never to contact them. Are we sure we should land?" Nuller forced an encouraging nod. "We'll do a quick reconnaissance. Gather enough info. Then if it's truly a threat, we'll follow procedure. But if it's harmless," Drek cut in, "we can still say we came and saw. Right?" K7 beeped. Chapter 12, Section 5 of Base's Extraterrestrial First Contact. All interactions must be discreet and respectful, unless otherwise mandated by a subclause disclaiming liability. No one quite understood what that meant. They took it as a sign that they should proceed carefully. With the autopilot set to stealth approach, which amounted to turning off the external lights and playing classical hold music, they entered Earth's atmosphere. Almost immediately, the readings showed pockets of dense population. They chose a less crowded location, some suburban area where houses lined up in neat rows. Slightly Lost shuddered and complained. The landing thrusters had never been tested under real conditions. The control panel blinked with ominous warnings. Drek wrestled with the sticks, cursing in half a dozen dialects. At the last second, they crashed into a patch of grass behind a row of houses, flattening a fence and scattering garden ornaments. They jolted to a stop in a swirl of dust and broken flamingos. Nuller expected alarms, frantic screaming, or Earth's version of a defense militia. Instead, he heard nothing but a dog barking in the distance and the faint hum of air conditioners. Drek shut off the engines with a tired sigh. "We made it. Not pretty, but we're alive." Varasnik examined the readouts. Atmosphere is full of microorganisms and pollen. "Filthy, but breathable." K7 declared. "Please file a crash report." "Thank you." Nuller pried, opened the exit hatch, and stepped onto Earth's soil. It felt oddly normal, a bit humid. He stared up to see a full blue sky with drifting clouds. The yard they'd landed in had a plastic table, a few chairs, and a short stone walkway to a back porch door. If this was a death world, it seemed suspiciously polite. A moment later, a sliding glass door opened, and a human in pajamas peeked out, holding a coffee mug. The human was a middle-aged woman with hair tied in a messy bun, blinking in the early sunlight. She didn't scream or faint or even drop her mug. She just looked from the spaceship to Nuller and back again. "You folks new to the neighborhood?" she asked, sounding more curious than alarmed. Nuller froze. He attempted a polite wave. We come in peace." She took a sip of coffee. "Right, well, I hope you're not with the HOA. They've been pestering me about the color of my fence." Then she pointed at the broken flamingos scattered around. "You, might want to pick those up before my husband sees them." And that was the end of that conversation, because she turned and went back inside. Nuller stood there, stunned. If she wasn't terrified, then either Earth was extremely accustomed to random spacecraft landings, or this woman hadn't had enough coffee to register the bizarre situation. Within the hour, the rest of the crew ventured out. Drek scouted the immediate neighborhood, discovering wide roads, neatly trimmed lawns, and parked cars. Vara almost fainted at the thought of how many germs might be lurking on the sidewalks. K7 rolled along, scanning everything and piping up with bureaucratic statements like, "Please observe local customs or risk subclause fines." And no one on the street seemed particularly perturbed by their presence. One child rode by on a bicycle, waved cheerily, and asked if they were cosplaying some new sci-fi franchise. Drek responded, Yes, we are with a big budget for special effects, which satisfied the child immensely. Word soon spread around the block that a weird group in strange outfits had arrived, and a few neighbors ambled over with curiosity. They asked typical neighborly questions like, "Did you guys drive all the way from Milwaukee?" Or so, "Is that spaceship electric or gas?" It was all so casual that Nuller wondered if Earth's true deadliness was hidden beneath a veneer of suburban complacency. They decided to walk a few blocks, following signals from their handheld scanners. According to the readouts, Earth had a variety of broadcast frequencies: television, radio, internet, digital communication. People whisked past them in cars, hardly giving them a second glance. A retiree watering her garden waved politely. On a street corner, a teenager with earbuds barely registered their existence. If danger lurked, it wasn't immediate or obvious. Yet every so often, the crew would see something that challenged their sense of normalcy. For instance, a man in sweatpants was jogging with a giant inflatable unicorn strapped to his back. Another was mowing his lawn at dawn, blasting loud music that had an aggressive bass line. Someone else was draping a banner that read, "Happy Divorce Party," across their front door. The chaos was subtle but ever-present, an undercurrent of comedic madness that seemed to define daily Earth life. Eventually, they stumbled upon a local shopping area, anchored by a large supermarket. The store's sliding glass doors whooshed open, revealing an assault on the senses. Bright lights, endless aisles of products, cheerful background music, and signs advertising everything from discount cereal to pool floaties shaped like flamingos. Vara gasped at the potential microbe count in the produce section. Drek stared at the towers of snacks in awe. Nuller spotted something labeled exotic foods, which ironically included freeze-dried insects and pickled vegetables. He wondered how Earth residents decided what was edible. None of the shoppers batted an eye at the crew, aside from the occasional curious glance at K, 7 trundling along behind them. When they reached the checkout, an employee greeted them with a forced smile and asked if they found everything okay. Nuller, feeling awkward, grabbed a chocolate bar to have something to purchase. The employee then asked if they had a rewards card. The entire concept baffled him. It was in the parking lot that they encountered a group of retirees setting up lawn chairs. One of them, a spry-looking individual named Beverly, offered them iced tea. She assumed they were theatrical performers on a road trip. She bragged about her grandchildren, who were super into aliens. Drek, always game for conversation, told her they were from very far away indeed. Beverly winked conspiratorially, as if to say, "Your secret is safe with me," but it was clear she didn't really believe them. That evening, the crew reconvened at the spaceship to share observations. Earth was undeniably real, undeniably inhabited by humans, and undeniably weird in a way that was both harmless and confounding. "Are we sure this is the unstoppable Deathworld?" Nuller asked. He felt like a kid in a candy store, enthralled and mystified. Vara insisted that maybe the deadliness was microbiological or cultural. "We have to remain vigilant. Any planet that can spawn such variety of amusements might hide something truly lethal." Drek shrugged. They drive cars that can apparently break down, they toss out giant flamingo statues in their yards for fun, and they get upset about fence colors. That's not what I call terrifying. Meanwhile, K7 recorded every detail, sometimes reciting notes out loud. Local currency is made of paper. Resource and efficiency is at 92%. Probability of threat unknown. Curiosity got the better of Nuller. He wanted deeper insight into human society. Over the next several days, the crew explored more corners of this suburban sprawl. They visited a coffee shop, discovered the addictive properties of caffeine, and watched in amazement as people spent hours tapping on glowing screens, ordering complicated drinks with extra syrups. They wandered into a public park where families fed ducks, children played on swings, and joggers circled the lake. The potential threat was nowhere to be found, unless one counted the geese, which hissed ominously if approached. One morning, as they strolled a sidewalk lined with small stores, they picked up an odd radio signal on their scanners. It was faint, ancient in its frequency, something broadcasting from a local tower. K7 interpreted the data. This wavelength is centuries old by standard galactic measure, possibly a relic. The device appears to be transmitting nonsense. They followed the signal to a dilapidated building that housed a local AM radio station, the kind that played folk music and talk shows about yard care. A harried DJ explained that the transmitter was an ancient contraption inherited from a now-defunct sister station. Nobody listens anymore, he admitted. But it's tradition. We keep it on in case anyone out there still cares. Nuller nearly burst out laughing. This was the source of the sinister broadcast that must have shown up on base's deep space archives as a cryptic sign of Earth's existence. It was just a radio station too stubborn to die. In that moment, Earth's entire vibe became clear. A planet that refused to follow conventional logic, but persisted through sheer defiance and routine. They recognized that Earth wasn't a death world so much as a mass of contradictions, both maddening and charming. Of course, base's mission demanded an official conclusion. Either Earth was too dangerous to remain known, or was harmless enough to keep off the radar. The question loomed. How would the higher-ups react once they learned Earth truly existed? Nuller worried that a fearful response could lead to drastic measures. And his fears were confirmed when a sudden message arrived on their craft's communication console. Attention, survey team. Senior official Zer Volek en route. Prepare to deliver full analysis. Those words sent a chill down Nuller's spine. Zer Volek was known in basis circles for his relentless dedication to protocol, a man who believed that anything unregulated posed a threat. If he was coming in person, it meant he intended to wrap up the Earth matter swiftly and decisively, likely with a complete lockdown or forced removal from Star. Shots. When Volek's imposing vessel descended onto the outskirts of town, it caused more of a stir than the slightly lost had. It was bigger, sleeker, and carried an air of official doom. The local news station even sent a camera crew, but the broadcast was overshadowed by a breaking story about a cat stuck in a tree. Volek disembarked wearing a formal uniform, flanked by a couple of base enforcers. He marched straight to Nuller and the others, ignoring the wide-eyed neighbors who pointed at the big ship like it was some special event. He got right to the point. You have confirmed that Earth exists. You have observed the inhabitants. Now we must determine whether Besa will finalize the erasure protocol. I have the authority to do so if we find Earth a threat. Nuller hesitated. Sir, I don't think Earth is a threat. It's unusual, chaotic, but not violent or malevolent. The people here are mostly just living their lives. Volek's gaze darkened. The records in our archives call it Deathworld, a place that defies all rational cosmic norms. A society so illogical that it could destabilize the galaxy if given free rein. Do you want that on your conscience? He motioned for his enforcers to bring forward a compact device. I have a means to obscure Earth's coordinates permanently. One command, and no one in the cosmos will be able to find it again. That ensures Base's peace of mind. Alarmed, Drek stepped forward. With respect, we've seen no reason to do that. The biggest threat we've encountered is the crazy goose in the park. Vara added, yes, they have questionable hygiene, but that's hardly cause for cosmic erasure. Zer Volek frowned in a way that signaled he found all of them incompetent. We'll verify it with an official standard test. I will remain here for a short period, gather empirical evidence of Earth's madness or docility. Then we'll make the final call. Until then, you are forbidden from interfering. He turned to the small group of onlookers, neighbors, passers-by, curious kids, and tried to shoo them away with a grim expression. The onlookers merely gave polite nods and continued about their business. One older gentleman with a cane asked if Volek was filming some sort of new movie. Volek bristled at the suggestion. With reluctant acceptance, Volek followed Nuller and the rest to observe daily human life. He was flabbergasted by how seamlessly the Earth dwellers took to the presence of 2 spaceships and a gaggle of odd visitors. One family even invited him to a backyard barbecue, offering him a hamburger. Volek regarded the charred meat suspiciously, but the hosts insisted it was a local delicacy. He tried it with a look of sheer terror, expecting poison. Moments later, he found it surprisingly tasty, though he refused to admit it out loud. He accompanied them to the local downtown area, where they found shops selling everything from comics to elaborate pastries. He watched a group of college students protest about recycling, chanting slogans half-heartedly for an hour before getting bored. He witnessed a frantic discount sale at a clothing store, where people wrestled over cheap socks. Everywhere he looked, there was confusion, contradictory behavior, and an odd willingness to shrug off bizarre events. If this was what the ancients had deemed lethal, it was lethal in a very different sense. After 2 days, Volek grew frustrated. Yes, they're illogical, but they don't appear to be waging cosmic war or inventing doomsday weapons at every turn. They're just annoyingly random. This can't be the entire truth. Nonetheless, he still intended to initiate the device to hide Earth forever. Better safe than sorry in the eyes of Base's upper echelons. So he selected a spot behind a large supermarket, an ostensibly neutral ground, and began setting up the coordinate scrambler that would warp Earth's data out of every star chart. K-7 recognized the device from Base's darkest protocols. Planet Nullifier Type 9, it croaked. Nuller and the others tried to talk him out of it, but he was resolute. I have orders. Besa will not risk a planet so chaotic. Stand Azida. That was the moment Earth intervened in the strangest way possible. A group of senior citizens arrived in cars, intending to claim the back lot for their regular bingo meetup. They discovered Volek blocking their usual parking space with a large, ominous device that emitted ominous lights. Their de facto leader, a fierce woman named Mildred, demanded, "Young man, you need to move that contraption. We have bingo in 15 minutes. Volek tried to wave her away. I'm performing an interstellar procedure. You cannot be here. Mildred scoffed. I've been parking here every Tuesday for the last decade. So unless that doohickey makes coffee, it can get out of the way. Her friends advanced, armed with walkers, canes, and unstoppable determination. Even Base's enforcers looked uncertain about how to handle a horde of insistent seniors. Her refused to yield. Nuller stifled a laugh. Volek glared, flustered but determined. The planet nullifier beeped, requiring a final authorization input. He typed codes as Mildred tapped her foot in disapproval. Finally, the device began to hum. Right then, one of Mildred's friends knocked it aside with a brisk nudge of a walker, messing up the calibration. Volek tried to re-enter commands, but the crowd pressed in, complaining about how they had coupons for the supermarket and needed to get inside. The device sputtered, beeped, and started smoking. Volek panicked. Stop! You're interfering with official cosmic authority. Official cosmic nonsense, Mildred retorted, jabbing a coupon in his face. You can blow up the planet after we get our groceries, sweetie. He stared at her, speechless. Nuller gently put a hand on Volek's shoulder. You see, sir, this is Earth's real weapon. They don't respect grand gestures or cosmic threats. They've got local business to handle, and nothing stands in their way. Volek's expression flickered from rage to exasperation. He realized that no matter how advanced his device or how absolute his authority was in the cosmic sense, these humans simply refused to treat him with the proper dread. A meltdown of formality. He let out a resigned sigh. The device beeped one last time, shorted out, and died. Moments later, a store employee came out to scold them for blocking the loading dock. Volek mumbled something about finishing an important operation. The employee handed him a flyer for a buy-one-get-one sale on gardening tools. For a long moment, he stared at it, utterly defeated. It took another day of reflection for Volek to conclude that Earth, while bizarre, was not an existential threat. Indeed, they were so nonsensical that they might be the best cosmic camouflage. No conquerors would waste time subjugating a planet that bickered over fence colors and worshiped coffee machines. No advanced civilization would see them as a serious risk. By the end of that day, Volek declared, I will mark Earth as requiring no further action. We shall keep the coordinates out of mainstream charts, but not attempt to forcibly erase them. Nuller exhaled in relief. Drek patted Volek on the back in a friendly manner, causing the official to flinch in surprise. Vara quietly muttered that this was probably for the best. She'd come to appreciate that. While Earth had its share of germs, it also had an impressive array of sanitizing products in every drugstore. K7 recorded the official statement, monotone as ever. Planet Earth. Status changed to harmlessly illogical. End directive. After word spread that the cosmic guys were packing up to leave, several neighbors waved goodbye, as if the whole fiasco had been nothing more than an entertaining spectacle. A few requested selfies, some offered parting gifts like baked goods or keychains. Earth, as it turned out, didn't particularly care whether it was recognized or not. It would go on living in its own messy, contradictory fashion. Volek departed first, still perplexed but resigned. He gave Nuller a stern warning to file a thorough mission report. Slightly lost, prepare to follow, needing a few hasty repairs after that rough landing. Before they took off, the woman who had initially sipped her coffee in the yard came by to hand them a plate of cookies. For the road, she said nonchalantly, as if spaceships and interstellar missions were entirely normal. Nuller thanked her, wondering if Earth's greatest power was its unflappable casualness. Drek chuckled while loading the cookies onto the ship, and Vara insisted she scan them for contaminants, though she later admitted they smelled delicious. K7 hummed contentedly, as if the entire comedic journey satisfied some cosmic sense of closure. When they rose into the sky, leaving behind the quiet streets, plastic flamingos, and backyard barbecues, Nuller felt a surge of affection for the planet that had once been labeled a death world. He now understood that the real reason Earth was so feared had nothing to do with unstoppable weaponry or monstrous beasts, but everything to do with unpredictability. Earth's greatest threat lay in how it refused to conform to standard cosmic logic. Some bureaucrats at Besa found that more terrifying than any laser cannon. Slightly Lost slipped out of Earth's atmosphere. On the console screen, a final message from Volek scrolled across. Pending closure of Earth incident. Final classification, non-threatening. Full secrecy recommended. Nuller nodded at Drek, who set the course for home. They soared into the dark void, guided by the starlight, leaving Earth to continue spinning under its own improbable set of rules. Back at Besa, the official debriefing was brief and anticlimactic. Nuller dutifully reported that Earth existed, but posed no real danger, and that all references should remain minimal to avoid stirring up confusion. Senior officials nodded, filed the report. Under miscellaneous, planetary oddities, and went back to focusing on more important bureaucratic matters like budget approvals and starport expansions. Nuller was neither commended nor punished. He simply returned to his dusty desk in the Department of Cartographic Anomalies, now with a deeper understanding of how the galaxy worked, or more accurately, how it sometimes didn't work. Every now and then, he would catch a stray snippet of Earth's signals drifting through the cosmic background, or come across a half-buried file referencing mythical bipeds with questionable tastes. He'd smile to himself, recalling the reality behind the rumors. Earth wasn't mythical, nor was it the monstrous threat the old logs had implied. It was just Earth, gloriously and defiantly unremarkable in 1,000 remarkable ways. The next time he booted up the antique console to update star charts, the system asked for any additions or redactions regarding Earth. He hesitated, then typed, "Coordinates remain unknown. Planet stable. People weird, coffee strong. No further action needed." Then, with a lingering grin, he pressed enter. The system filed it away, no alarm sounded, and life in the Bureau of Extrastellar Administration rolled on like it always did, piles of forms and all. In the end, the legend of the mythical Deathworld remained in whispered lore among bored cartographers and anxious officials who liked to imagine apocalyptic scenarios. But for Nuller Glim, Drexon, Vara Snick, and the glitchy K7, Earth was no myth. It was a friendly, and sometimes baffling, patch of chaos in a galaxy full of order. And that, they decided, was precisely why it was worth protecting, even if it meant letting the planet carry on in its own bizarre way, unbothered by cosmic protocols or the grand illusions of interstellar civilization. When he had a free moment, Nuller sometimes wondered if Earthlings would ever figure out they'd been visited. He suspected it wouldn't matter. Even if the day came when humans realized their planet had been labeled a cosmic hazard, they would likely respond with a collective shrug, offer some snacks, and maybe ask the alien visitors to help with yard work or join a neighborhood watch meeting. It was that unshakable, everyday spirit, that refusal to be impressed by big, cosmic reveals that defined Earth. So Nuller let it be, content in knowing that even a sprawling bureaucracy like Besa couldn't fully erase a planet so full of contradictory charm. Earth would remain for those who truly wanted to find it. And as for those who feared it, perhaps it was for the best they left it alone. After all, as the mission had proven, Earth had its own unstoppable force, a casual, unstoppable sense of normalcy that could unravel the mightiest attempts at overbearing regulation. Some evenings, Nuller gazed out a window in the Besa Tower, glancing at distant stars, recalling the comfortable chaos of that suburban yard, the friendly wave of strangers, and the unstoppable seniors who had foiled the planet nullifier. In a galaxy obsessed with efficiency and logic, Earth was a little pocket of unbridled spontaneity. And that, to him, was a kind of magic that no chart, no classification, and no official protocol could ever truly contain.